"You're just the cleaning lady." My racist neighbors jeered while I was gardening. I smiled and said nothing. Minutes later, my husband, a four-star general, arrived with a military convoy to take me to the White House dinner. And I said, "There is no black and white when it comes to dignity." I have lived in this neighborhood for 11 years. 11 years of waving at people who looked right through me. 11 years of being invisible. And I was okay with that. I had my garden, my roses, my quiet Saturday mornings. I had my life. But the day Sandra Cole moved in next door, everything changed. Not for me, for her. She just didn't know it yet. It was a warm Saturday morning in October, the kind of morning that feels too beautiful to waste indoors. I was in my front garden kneeling in the dirt with my old gray gloves on, my hair wrapped in a scarf, wearing the most comfortable, most worn-out clothes I owned. I was planting red roses along the fence line. I do this every fall. I have done it every fall since we moved into this house. It is one of the few things in this world that makes me feel completely at peace. I was not thinking about anything. Not about work, not about James, not about the world, just me, the soil, and the roses. That is the thing about gardening. It empties your mind. You put your hands in the earth, and everything else disappears. I noticed Sandra about 10 minutes before she spoke to me. She had moved into the house next door 3 months ago. I had seen the moving trucks. I had seen the expensive furniture. I had seen her tall, blonde, dressed like every day was a business meeting. I had waved at her twice from my driveway. Both times she looked at me, and then looked away. Not the shy kind of looking away, the deliberate kind. The kind that says, "I see you, I just don't think you're worth acknowledging." I noticed it. I said nothing. Some people take time to warm up, I told myself. Some people are just private. On this morning, Sandra was walking back from the corner with her coffee cup in hand. She slowed down when she passed my house. I felt her eyes on me before I heard her voice. I kept my head down. I pressed a rose stem gently into the soil. Then she laughed. It was not a warm laugh. It was the kind of laugh that is meant to be heard, loud and casual, like she was performing for an audience. She turned toward her husband Rick, who was standing near their car, and said loud enough for me and every neighbor within earshot to hear, "Oh, look, they finally got some help for that big house. Must be nice to afford a cleaning lady." Rick snickered. I stopped. My hands were still in the soil. I felt something move through my chest. Not rage, not embarrassment. Something quieter, something heavier. I had felt it before. It is the feeling you get when someone reduces 11 years of your life to a single wrong assumption. When someone looks at you, a black woman in old clothes on her knees, and decides, without asking a single question, who you are and where you belong. I turned my head slowly and looked at her. Our eyes met. Sandra's smile didn't fade right away. She held my gaze with that particular kind of confidence that money gives people, the kind that says, "I am right, and you are beneath me, and we both know it." I did not speak. I did not frown. I did not look away. I smiled, slowly, the same way you smile at someone who has just made a mistake they don't yet know they've made. Then I turned back to my roses. Sandra must have taken my silence as confirmation of her assumption, because she added even louder this time. "Hard work, I'm sure. I hope they pay you well, honey." She walked inside her house. I heard her door close. I sat in the dirt for another moment. I pressed my hands flat against the soil. I could feel the earth, cool and steady, under my palms. I breathed in slowly, breathed out. I thought, she has no idea whose garden this is. And then I went back to planting my roses. Because my roses didn't need to know what Sandra Cole thought of me. And honestly, neither did I. Not yet. But I want you to remember this moment. Remember that smile I gave her. Because that smile, that one quiet, unbothered smile, was the beginning of the end for Sandra Cole. She just didn't know it yet. And neither did I. Not completely. Not until about 20 minutes later, when the ground started to vibrate. I heard it before I saw it. A low, rumbling, deep, rhythmic, like something heavy was moving through the earth itself. Not one engine, several. And they were coming down my street. I stood up from the garden, pulling off one glove to brush the dirt from my knee. I looked up toward the end of the street. The rumbling was getting louder. Then I saw them. 3 black SUVs, the kind with tinted windows and government plates. Behind them, 2 military vehicles, the kind you do not see in residential neighborhoods. They moved slowly, in formation, and they were turning onto my street. I watched my neighbors come outside. One by one, front doors opened. People stepped onto porches, shading their eyes with their hands. Mrs. Patterson from number 14 stood frozen with her garden hose still running. The teenage boy from across the street stopped his bicycle in the middle of the road and just stared. The convoy stopped in front of my house. All of them. Right in front of my garden. Right in front of my roses. The passenger door of the lead SUV opened first. A young soldier stepped out, clean uniform, sharp posture, white gloves. He walked to my front gate, stood at attention, and said, "Mrs. Monroe, the general is ready when you are." I nodded. I pulled off my second glove. The back door of the second SUV opened, and James stepped out. General James Monroe, 4 silver stars on his collar, full dress uniform pressed, perfect, heavy with medals that each represented something most people would never be able to imagine. He is not a tall man, James. He is not loud. He does not need to be. There is something about the way he moves deliberate, certain, like every step has been decided before it is taken, that makes people stand up straight without knowing why. He walked through my gate, down the path, straight to me. He looked at my hands, dirty from the garden. He reached out and took both of them in his white-gloved hands. He looked at me for a moment with those serious, steady eyes of his. Then he smiled, the small, private smile. He saves only for me, and he kissed my knuckles, both hands, slowly. "The dinner starts at 7, he said quietly. "The president sent a personal reminder. He says you always make better conversation than I do." I laughed. A real laugh. I squeezed his hands. "Give me 10 minutes, I said. "Take 12, he said. "You deserve it." He walked back to the convoy. The young soldier held the SUV door open. I picked up my gardening tools, set them neatly by the fence, and walked to my front door. Before I went inside, I paused on the top step. I looked across at Sandra's house. She was standing at her window, completely still. Her coffee cup was in her hand, but her hand had stopped halfway to her mouth. Her face, that confident, laughing face from 20 minutes ago, had gone the color of milk. She was staring at James, at the stars, at the convoy, at my house. I could see the exact moment it landed, the exact moment the equation she had solved in her head. Black woman, old clothes, kneeling in the dirt, cleaning lady collapsed completely. I watched her face rearrange itself. Shock. Then something that looked like the first, distant approach of fear. I did not wave. I did not smile this time. I just went inside and got dressed. And here is the thing nobody tells you about moments like that. You'd think I would have felt triumphant, vindicated, full of fire. But I didn't. I felt something much quieter, something almost like sadness. Not for myself, for her. Because I knew the way you know things you wish you didn't, that Sandra Cole was not the kind of person who learned from moments like this. She was the kind of person who got humiliated and then got angry. Very, very angry. I just didn't know yet how dangerous that anger would be. The next morning, my doorbell rang at 9 o'clock. I knew before I opened the door. I don't know how I knew. I just did. I stood in my kitchen for a moment, coffee in hand, and I thought, here she comes. I opened the door. Sandra Cole was standing on my porch. She was dressed carefully, expensive blouse, hair done, a practiced smile on her face. She was holding nothing. She had not brought flowers or food or any of the usual things neighbors bring when they come to apologize. She had only brought herself, which told me everything about what this visit actually was. It was not an apology. It was damage control. "Good morning," she said, with the brightness of someone performing goodwill rather than feeling it. "I think we got off on the wrong foot. I'd love for us to start fresh neighbors. Should look out for each other, right?" She extended her hand. I looked at it. There are hands you take because they're offered in real kindness, and there are hands you take because refusing feels rude. I have spent most of my life taking that second kind of hand, smiling, making people comfortable, absorbing their mistakes so they wouldn't have to sit with them. Not this time. I looked up from her hand to her face. I looked at her for a moment, really looked at her, the way she had looked through me 100 times. Then I said, very calmly, I appreciate you coming over, but I don't think friendship is something I'm interested in, Sandra. What I'd ask is that you mind your own business and I'll mind mine. I'm sorry. I stepped back and closed the door. Not slammed, closed, quietly. That was important to me. I did not give her a dramatic moment. I gave her a door that closed the same way any door closes when a conversation is simply over. I stood in my hallway for a moment, listening. I heard her on the porch, a pause, a small, sharp exhale. Then her footsteps going back down the path. Then silence. I went back to my coffee. But I want to be honest with you. I was not completely calm. My hands were steady, but inside I felt something tighten. A small, careful fear. Not the kind that makes you run, the kind that makes you pay attention, because I had just done something that certain kinds of people cannot bear. I had refused to let Sandra Cole feel forgiven. I had refused to make her comfortable. I had refused, most of all, to pretend the previous day hadn't happened. And women like Sandra Cole, women who have never been told no by someone they've already decided is beneath them, do not handle that well. I told myself I was overthinking it. I told myself she would be embarrassed and quiet and that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, on a Tuesday afternoon, I walked out to my mailbox. It was a simple thing. A 30-second walk down my front path, out the gate, to the mailbox at the curb. I had done it 10,000 times. I never made it back inside. Sandra was in her front yard. I saw her when I turned from the mailbox. She was standing near her porch, and she had a leash in her hand. At the end of the leash was Bruno, her large, dark dog. I had heard him bark from behind her fence before, but never seen him up close. He was big, the kind of big that is not playful. Our eyes met over the fence. Sandra looked at me for one long moment. Her face was completely still. Not angry, not afraid. Just still the way a face gets when someone has made a decision and is past the point of second thoughts. She reached down, and she unclipped the leash. Bruno did not hesitate. He came through the gate so fast I barely had time to turn. He hit me from the side teeth into my left forearm. The pain was immediate and total, the kind that whites out your vision for a second. I screamed. I don't know what I said. I heard doors opening, heard voices. Someone shouted Bruno's name. He released my arm and Sandra finally called him back. Her voice unhurried, like she had simply changed her mind about something small. I stood at my mailbox, holding my arm, blood soaking through my sleeve, and Sandra looked at me one last time from her porch. She didn't look afraid. She didn't look guilty. She looked, and I will never forget this, satisfied. She went inside. Hey, if you're watching this and feeling what I felt in that moment, stop for a second and hit that subscribe button. This story is far from over, and you do not want to miss what happens to Sandra Cole. I promise you what comes next is something she never saw coming. Not even close. I did not go to the hospital alone. Mrs. Patterson from number 14 drove me. She had seen everything from her porch, and she was shaking more than I was. She held my good hand the entire drive and kept saying, "That woman, that woman." She could not find a worse word for Sandra. Maybe she was trying to protect me. Maybe she just couldn't find one that was bad enough. The doctors cleaned the wound. They gave me stitches, 9 of them, in 2 rows on my left forearm. Then came the conversation I had been dreading. The vet records for Bruno were incomplete. His last rabies vaccination was 3 years ago, and the standard was 2. Until they could confirm his records, I would need to begin post-exposure treatment as a precaution. If you have never had rabies post-exposure injections, let me tell you, it is not one shot. It is a series, multiple visits. The injections are given in the muscle, and they hurt in a deep, exhausting way. The first round made me nauseous. I sat in the hospital parking lot afterward and I cried. Not from the pain, from the weight of all of it. From the fact that I had done nothing except walk to my mailbox. From the fact that a woman I had never wronged had decided to put me through this because I had refused to shake her hand. I drove home. I sat in my kitchen. I made tea. I did not drink. I watched the clock. James came home at 7:30. He walked in the way he always does, setting his keys down on the table by the door, calling my name once to let me know he was home. Then he came into the kitchen and saw my arm, the bandage, the stillness in my face. He put down his bag and sat across from me. "Tell me," he said. So I told him. All of it. From the first morning, the cleaning lady comment, the silence, the smile, the convoy, Sandra at the window, the doorbell, the rejected handshake, the closed door, and then Tuesday afternoon, the mailbox, the unclipped leash, the bite, the hospital, the injections. James listened to every word without interrupting. His face did not change in the way most people's faces change when they hear something upsetting. It didn't show anger or distress. It became very, very still. The way still water is deceptive, it looks calm on top, but underneath everything is in motion. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "Why didn't you tell me earlier, before this?" I had been expecting that question. I had been turning the answer over in my mind for 2 days. "Because I wanted her to stop on her own," I said. "I wanted her to realize what she was doing, and feel the weight of it, and choose differently. I thought if she was confronted with who we actually are, with the convoy, with the dinner, with all of it, she would understand. I thought shame would be enough." I paused. "She doesn't feel shame, James. She feels entitled, and I didn't want to escalate. I didn't want a war with my neighbor. I just wanted her to leave me alone." James nodded, very slowly. The way he nods when he is not agreeing with you but is choosing to hear you before he speaks. "She put you in a hospital," he said, quietly, without heat. "I know. That's not a neighborhood disagreement, Diana. That's a crime." He stood up. He picked up his phone from the table. He did not call anyone in front of me. He walked to his office and closed the door softly. I sat at the kitchen table and held my bandaged arm against my chest and listened to the silence of the house around me. I want to tell you something about that moment, about what it feels like when you have been carrying something alone and you finally put it down. It doesn't feel like relief right away. It feels like exhaustion, like your body finally remembers how tired it has been. I sat there in my kitchen and I felt 11 years of small moments, every ignored wave, every sideways glance, every assumption settle onto my shoulders all at once, and I just breathed through it. James was in his office for 40 minutes. When he came back, he sat down across from me again. He reached across the table and put his hand over mine, the unbandaged one. "It's handled," he said. 2 words. That's all he gave me. I knew better than to ask more. "But I want you to understand something. It's handled," from James Monroe, does not mean what it means when most people say it. Most people say it and mean, "I talked to someone and they'll look into it." James says it and means, "I made calls to people who owe me things, and those things are already in motion, and by tomorrow morning a file will exist that Sandra Cole cannot wish away." He is not a man who does things halfway. I was watering my roses when the police arrived at Sandra's house. It was 8:47 in the morning. I know the exact time because I had just checked my watch, thinking I needed to take my second round of medication at 9. I was standing at my garden fence, watering can in hand, when I heard the cars. 2 police vehicles first, then an animal control truck, then a plain gray car that I recognized not from its make or model, but from the quiet authority of the way it parked. The kind of car that carries someone who doesn't need a uniform to have power. A detective, a woman, mid-40s, carrying a folder, and moving with the kind of purpose that does not slow down for front porches or robe-clad homeowners. Sandra's door opened about 30 seconds after the first knock. She was in a silk robe, hair not yet done. She looked at the police, She looked at animal control. Her eyes moved past them toward the detective. She said something I couldn't hear the words from my garden. I saw her hands come up, palms out, the universal gesture of someone starting to say, "I can explain." The detective showed her something, a document. Sandra's hands came down. "I want to tell you what Sandra didn't know yet. What James had done in those 40 minutes in his office. He had made calls not to people in positions of casual influence, but to people who had been in courtrooms, in legal offices, in the right parts of government long enough to know exactly what buttons to press. He had obtained Sandra's dog's vet records, which confirmed the vaccination lapse. He had filed a formal report of the incident with documentation including timestamps and the hospital records. And this was the unexpected part, the part that surprised even me. One of our neighbors had a security camera on their porch that had captured the entire Tuesday afternoon moment. The leash, Sandra's hand, the deliberate unclip, Bruno, me at the mailbox. All of it, on video, time-stamped. In our state, deliberately releasing an animal to attack another person is not a civil matter. It is criminal assault. Add the incomplete vaccination records and the victim's resulting medical treatment, and the charges stack up very quickly. I watched the detective speak to Sandra for several minutes on the porch. I watched Sandra's face move through a sequence of emotions. Confusion, then protest, then a sudden sharp understanding, then something that cracked open underneath the surface. Fear. Real fear. The kind you can't argue your way out of or buy your way around. She looked across the street. At me. I was still holding the watering can. I had not moved. This time I did not smile. I did not look away. I just held her gaze steadily, the way she had held mine that first morning with complete calm. Without blinking, Sandra looked away first. They did not handcuff her on the porch. They were professional, quiet, discreet the way these things are done when the person who filed the report has a certain kind of reach. Sandra was escorted to one of the police vehicles. Her front door was closed. Her car sat in the driveway. Her house sat exactly as it had for 3 months. Big, expensive, full of nice things. But Sandra was no longer in it. I learned the details later. Criminal assault charge. $10,000 fine. 1 year of incarceration. Her real estate license flagged for review pending the criminal proceedings. The kind of record that does not disappear from background checks. The kind that follows you into every future job application, every licensing renewal, every place you try to start over. Her money couldn't fix it. Her confidence couldn't fix it. Her carefully maintained image, the successful real estate agent, the upscale new neighbor was done. And here is the unexpected twist, the one I did not anticipate and have thought about many times since. 3 of Sandra's real estate clients, who had somehow heard about the incident and the arrest, withdrew their listings from her agency that week. Word travels in the circles Sandra had built her life inside, and in those circles, a criminal charge, especially one as ugly as deliberately sicking a dog on a neighbor, is not something that gets quietly forgiven. Those circles close. The doors that opened for her because of her profession, and her poise, and her money simply stop opening. She had spent years building a reputation. It came down in 4 days. Hey, hit that notification bell right now if you haven't already, because I'm going to be sharing the full ending of this story very soon, and I know for a fact that Sandra's final moment is the part that's going to stay with you. The moment she was taken away was not my ending. My ending came a little later, and it was not what you're expecting. Don't miss it. I almost didn't say anything. I had decided, in the days between the arrest and Sandra's formal processing, that I was done, that I had nothing left to say, that the legal system had spoken and I could close this chapter and go back to my roses and my Saturday mornings and my peace. I had decided that she wasn't worth my words. But then the morning came when they allowed her back to her house, briefly supervised, to collect some personal belongings before her processing. I was at my front gate when her car pulled up. She walked from the vehicle to her front door with a police escort and a small bag. She was dressed plainly now. No expensive blouse. No careful presentation. She looked like someone whose armor had been removed and who hadn't yet figured out who they were without it. She saw me at the gate. She stopped walking. For a moment, neither of us moved. I don't know what she expected. Maybe anger, maybe a speech, maybe tears, maybe that I'd look away. I unlatched my gate. I walked out. I stopped about 6 feet from her, close enough to speak clearly, far enough that nothing about this moment could be misread. I looked at her and I spoke. Not fast, not slow, just clearly, like I was saying something that had been waiting inside me for a very long time. Sandra, I want you to hear me, not as your neighbor, not as the woman you decided was a cleaning lady, just as a human being speaking to another human being. She was very still. We know we are black, I said. We have always known that. We know that our history in this country is painful and long and complicated. We do not forget it. But what I want you to understand, what I need you to understand before you go, is that our history does not define our ceiling. It never did. 11 years ago, my husband and I bought this house. We paid for it with work and sacrifice and love, the same way anyone pays for anything worth having. That garden you laughed at? I planted every single thing in it with my own hands. I paused. I let that sit. You looked at me on my knees in my own garden, and you decided you knew my story. You decided you knew my worth. You decided who I was before you had spoken a single word to me. And then, when the world corrected your assumption, when you saw that your story about me was wrong, you didn't feel shame. You felt threatened, and you let a dog attack me because of it. Sandra's jaw tightened. Her eyes were wet. I don't know if it was guilt or humiliation or something colder than both. You are a human being, I said. And I am a human being. Not a cleaning lady, not a lesser neighbor, not a problem to be handled. A human being. And black people are human beings. We are not background characters in someone else's comfortable life. We are not the help. We are not the assumption. We are not the stereotype. We are people. I took one breath. There is no black and white when it comes to dignity. There is only human and not human. And the choice between those two things, that is a choice every single person makes every single day. You made yours. And this, I gestured briefly toward the police escort, toward the bag in her hand, toward all of it. This is the consequence of yours. I met her eyes one last time. Goodbye, Sandra. I genuinely hope that wherever you go after this, you become someone different than who you were here. Not for my sake, for yours. Because the person you were here, the person who laughed at a woman planting roses in her own garden, that person was not happy. That kind of hatred is heavy. I hope you put it down. I turned. I walked back through my gate. I latched it behind me. I heard her police escort say something to her, just a quiet word. Move along now. I heard her footsteps. I heard the car door. I did not look back. I walked to my garden. I crouched down next to my roses. I pressed my hands into the soil, cool, steady, real. I breathed in. And here is the thing I want you to walk away with, because it is the truest thing I know. I was not okay throughout all of this. I was scared. I cried in a hospital parking lot. I sat in my kitchen for nights with my bandaged arm and a cold cup of tea and thought about all the ways the world is still not what it should be. I was tired, so deeply tired, but I did not break. And I want you to know why. Because I had roots, not the kind that keep you stuck in place, the kind that keep you standing when the wind is bad. My roots were in that garden, in that soil, in 11 years of building a real life in that house. My roots were in James, who sat across from me at my kitchen table and said, "Tell me," and meant every word. My roots were in knowing, really knowing, in my bones, that what Sandra Cole thought of me had no power over what I actually was. She called me a cleaning lady. She meant it as something small. But I have been cleaning things my whole life. Clearing space. Clearing away other people's assumptions. Clearing the ground so that something beautiful can grow. If that is what a cleaning lady is, then yes, absolutely. I am the cleaning lady, and my roses have never looked better. If this story meant something to you, if it made you feel something, If it reminded you of a moment in your own life when someone decided who you were before you had a chance to show them, I want to hear from you. Drop it in the comments. This is a space for real stories, real voices, real dignity. Share this with someone who needs it. Subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you truly for being here. I'll see you in the next chapter of life.